Bernard Phelan was told he would die in prison by a judge in Iran after he was falsely accused of spying against the regime. The dual Irish-French national was released in May 2023, but not after he spent time in the notorious Satan's Block at Mashhad prison. For the Europe Conversation, I catch up with him and ask him about this traumatic time. Bernard Phelan, thanks very much for coming into the Europe Conversation. In your book, you describe unimaginable cruelty in Iran, in the prisons and so on, and we'll get to that. Particularly the name of your book, You Will Die in Prison, which is what a judge said to you when he gave you 6.5 years time. Let's start from the start, though. You are a Paris-based travel consultant. You have both French and Irish dual nationality.
It was my 5th visit to Iran, and I've been there since about 3 weeks earlier. I'd crossed the border from Turkey with my friend and customer. His nickname is Mike, and we've been travelling across northern Iran exploring a project for the Silk Road by train. And I knew Iran pretty well at this stage, and we arrived in Mashhad, the second city of Iran, the holy city, and we had spent the night at his dad's flat, and the next day had lunch in the centre, went home, came back to take photographs of the mosque and lit up at night. 2 guys walked up to us and said, "Follow us." Put out a card, plain clothes, went to sit in a wall while they asked for our passports, and that's where it all started.
So they were police, they were undercover, and they asked you for your passports. So it's a sort of a delicate area because it's near a very important mosque, religious site. So maybe your interpretation at the time is this is a sort of a minor issue.
I think I thought my pal had a big Canon camera, a big lens, and there are not many foreign tourists in Mashhad, and I just think it attracted attention. Yeah, and I think they started off with this is just inquiring, and then when they realised they had a French national on their hands, this sounds like this looks interesting. And they had, the Iranians have a shopping list of hostages, and I was just the wrong person, wrong place, wrong time.
Because you said in the book, that they want French, Belgian, Swedish hostages because the Iranians have lots of prisoners in those countries, so they could do a swap.
Exactly.
Let's just go back to even, that evening when they decided to say, we want to check a few things here. What was the process of then getting to a prison? When were we actually told you're in serious trouble here, we're going to accuse you of something, and then you ended up getting 6.5 years?
Well, from the first time I was interrogation, we went to a prayer room near the mosque, and that went on for 2 or 3 hours of questioning. Why you were around? What did you see? Have you seen protests? Did you take part in protests, etc.? And then I was transferred to put in a car, blindfolded, handcuffs, and taken to an interrogation centre and put in the first cell. There was another guy in the cell, then taken out. I couldn't get to say hello to him. Taken to another cell where there were 2 guys, and I asked them why I was there, and they held up their fists. They were protesters. And then they were taken out, and that night, lying on the floor with a blanket, because there was no bed, I heard the door opening of another cell and somebody being beaten, and I knew I was in trouble. This is serious, serious situation. And then I was taken to another interrogation centre. That's where the interrogation and my solitary confinement was, where every day I'd be taken out, blindfolded, handcuffed to a room to be interrogated by the Iranians. That went on for nearly a month.
You're a gay man. You've your husband, Roland Bonello, in Paris, and you're living with HIV.
Yeah.
So anyone would imagine that would make life for you extremely difficult in a country that bans homosexuality.
No, I mean, it sort of surprised everybody. I mean, I've been to Iran twice with Roland, and it was never a problem in a hotel asking for a double room. Nobody would bat an eyelid. People were extremely tolerant. I mean, I know how they treat Iranian gay community. It's horrible. They hang them. It's unspeakable torture for them. But the fact that you need a hostage in good health, I knew nothing was going to happen to me physically. Going to be no torture, they wouldn't beat me up. But
wasn't it that the response wasn't too shocking, though, to you when you said you were gay, or Roland was your husband, for example? They said to you, why don't you have any children?
Yeah, I was flabbergasted. You say, Roland, you're married. Who you married to? Roland Bonello. That's a man's name. Have you any children? I said, no. Why did you not adopt children? It's a strange conversation to have in a country like that.
And again, you were sentenced to 6.5 years. Tell us about what the judge had said to you.
The first judge when I met, when I was taken to the court, the revolutionary court, dressed in prison striped uniforms, handcuffs, shackles on your feet, climbing 3 floors of stairs, very sore in the ankles, brought in front of the judge. He asked me to sign papers. I refused. I said, would you sign a paper in English or in Persian or in Irish or in French? He just looked at me. They brought in the guard, tried to get him to persuade me to sign. I said, no, I'm not signing.
It was like essentially a confession.
Yeah. I don't know what it was. And I said, I'm not signing that. And crossed my arms like that. And the judge said, go out. And just as getting up to walking out, I said, you will die in prison. And then the main court case, they started saying, you've been sending information to foreigners, to the Guardian, etc. Because I'd written an article long years ago in the Guardian as a competition about travel and about Iran and how nice Iran was. It's a great holiday destination. And they were saying I was sending information to the Guardian. It's crazy.
What did it feel like when a judge in Iran is sentencing you on false charges, telling you you're going to die in prison?
It's a horrible shock. I thought that I would not survive physically. Because Benjamin had been there for 3.5 years. And I'd just been there for almost 6 months then. And I said, I'm not going to make this. I just can't see myself living here, for 6 years. I can be here for another 2 years. My dad was 97 at the time. He was in good health. I might never see him again. If he died, would my family tell me? I don't know. It's a horrible, horrible situation. Here in Europe, a prisoner knows when he's going to get out. He's been condemned for 5 years, 10 years, 6 months. We don't know when we're going to get out. There were political prisoners in there who've been condemned for 2 or 3 years. They're there still 5 years later. You don't know.
Because your block in Mshad prison was called Satan's block.
Exactly.
Which is where people who are condemned to death were. And one of the things that you mentioned, which I just found really heartbreaking, was that you had to listen to the men crying who were about to be executed or feeling they're going to be executed. Yeah,
the next morning it was any prisoner in our prison who were going to be executed were brought to our block the night before. And then, during evening time when we were cooking, you'd hear them crying in their cell and with their shoes in front of the door. That was heartrending. Just the idea that you're beside somebody who's going to be hung the next day after prayers. It's really strange. I mean, they don't execute during Ramadan. So after Ramadan ended, there were just a continuous stream of men in that cell. I mean, Iran is number 2 after China in terms of executions.
But that level of psychological cruelty on those people is just an added torture.
Yeah, absolutely.
So from a diplomatic point of view, were you given any hope from the French and the Irish? Did they work together? What sort of level of detail were you given along the way to say, Bernard, there's hope?
We weren't given, all the time they were saying we're negotiating, we're talking to the Iranians, please don't make any noise, don't upset things, which is obviously what you shouldn't do. We need to tell the world the Iranians are doing this to European citizens. As Roland said once, the fear has to change camp. Tell the Iranians they're badly treating us. Tell them we're in solitary confinement. Tell them, and everybody, diplomats were saying, particularly the French, say, no, don't say anything, don't say it. And I just couldn't put up with any more of that. And when I met Sonia McGuinness, the Irish ambassador to Iran, based in Ankara, I saw her on the 1st of May. I'll never forget that meeting. I walked into the room and she rushed up to me and hugged me, and I could see the guard was aghast, because men and women cannot touch each other unless they're married or daughter or something like that. And Sonia was very, very feminine woman, and she dressed very well. And we sat down and were talking. And I told Sonia, I said, I can't take any more of this.
She ended up, thankfully, not there for 6.5 years, 222 days, which is 222 days too much.
Well, apparently there was an attempt to get us out in April, which had failed. And I don't know the background to that. I never found out. And I remember on the 11th of May, Benjamin and I were called down to security, which was a regular event to get books or to get clothes that had been sent or some other reason. And we went downstairs, there was nobody in the corridor. The phones had been totally taken off the wall. Nothing, silence. This is really strange. Went into Mr. Shahadi's office, the head of security. Nobody there, there's always 3 or 4 people. And told us to sit down. He said, you're going to be released today. He said, but first you must sign a letter, write a letter in English or French saying that you will not attack the prison or the Iranian state for mistreatment. Without even talking to each other, we both said no simultaneously. He said, go back up to your cells. I went back up, but there was a strange atmosphere in the block. Something was going to happen that day. An hour later, the prison worker came back and said, take your stuff, you're going.
Well, anyway, you're out now. You're released in May 2023, and thankfully you got to see your dad, who unfortunately passed at the end of October.
Yep.
But at least you had some time with him over a year, and you got to see him again.
It was very emotional. It was, he was so happy to see me, and I didn't realise how much he'd been involved in getting me out and speaking for me, and that video with him in front of the Iranian embassy in Dublin when they did the vigil, extremely moving when he speaks about his son, because I'd already lost my other brother through illness a long time ago. The idea for him of losing another son was just heart-rending. And it was such a wonderful moment to see him and be able to touch him.
Okay, well, Bernard Phelan, thank you very much for joining us on the Europe Conversation.
Thank you.